40,000 items in a household. That is unbelievable. 40,000 items on average in a household. Imagine if you're trying to downsize a house that you've lived in forever to move into a senior care community. Imagine that. I can't even imagine, Francis.
40,000 is a big number.
That's a big number. And now I want to go home and count all my things. So just kidding, I don't. Welcome to Mavericks of Senior Living. We're delighted to have some incredible folks to talk about the transition into senior care on our show today. And before that, Francis and I are happy to show a little video from our sponsors. And we'll be right back.
This incredible show made possible by our wonderful sponsors, Assured Senior Living, love, it's what we do, and Serenity Engage, where care connects. Now, a brief message from Serenity Engage. Serenity connects aging service providers, older adults, and their loved ones in a single network. Our web, mobile, and smart assistance products power the network that enables real-time, HIPAA-compliant communication, collaboration, and education. When we care together, providers increase revenue and lower expenses, older adults receive better care, and family has greater peace of mind.
And we are back, and thank you to both of our guests here. We have Mr. Ray Fabik of Caring Transitions coming out of the great state of Ohio. I can say that because he's not in Columbus, so it's okay. And then we have Mr. Mark Middleton coming at us from Florida. So, gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. And thanks for the football shout out already.
Yeah. It's August. It's almost football season.
I figured it had to be a sports related thing. I just stay out.
So, Ray, kind of tell us a little bit about Caring Transitions and where your passion comes from for serving those that are aging.
Sure. So Caring Transitions is an organization throughout the country that helps people downsize, relocate, liquidate their memories and their items as they move, and usually from their lifetime home into senior housing. That is one of those processes that I don't think people realize the pain that goes along with it, the stress that goes along with it. So really my passion with this is it's one of those senior services that I think gets forgotten. It's one of those services that sneaks up on families in seniors. It is an added stress. You worry a lot about where mom and dad are going to go and what is that going to be like, and forget sometimes that they're leaving a lifetime home of memories and stuff. And what do you do with all the memories and stuff? And if our brand and any organization can help seniors and their families reduce their stress during that amount of time, then we think that's a good thing. And we use a phrase here called day one living, which is if we can help seniors once they move, start living on day one, that's the key for us. And that's our passion. If we can get mom or dad, if they've left their lifetime home and it feels like home day one when they move, then mission accomplished.
Absolutely. Wow. I love that day one. That's really powerful.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about this. And all of the items, 40,000, however many there are, that's a lot to go through, and many that you may not even know where they came from, what the memories were, why mom kept them so long, things like that. I know that we've talked about this on a few other shows, so really excited to dive into this topic.
And then Mark, kind of tell us about Growing Boulder and the relationship that you've established with Caring Transitions and how you two are becoming a force in, I think, how we're looking at aging.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Growing Boulder is a media company and I guess an active lifestyle brand. Internally, I describe us as a healthcare company because I think ultimately that's, what we're all involved in. And, Growing Boulder looks at aging through a prism of possibility and opportunity, and not simply loss and limitation, which I think most of us have been led to think about aging. We don't deny the reality of our mortality. We don't pretend that aging doesn't have its struggles, but every life stage. Every age has its struggle. So, our whole vision is to share the stories of ordinary people that continue to live extraordinary lives, people that become resilient. They figure out how to keep on keeping on because, we all have the ability to extract moments of joy out of our life until the very end. And, we talk a lot about transitions. Life is about transitioning. In fact, we've got a television show that's called What's Next, which is, based upon the premise that we're all looking for what's next in our life. It's an exciting notion, I think, when we're younger, but when we get to be older, we don't realize there might be a what's next. We don't realize that the rest of our life can be the best of our life, no matter how old we are. So, we help people understand that they should lean in to change. They should lean into opportunity. And so as we talk about, not necessarily attacking transitions, but realizing they can be, something that's good for us and our family. We just kind of bumped into Ray and his amazing company, which are, really doing the same thing. I mean, I sat down with Ray and his staff, and once I saw the leadership of this company, we have interviewed and done videos with the people that work for the company, the franchisees that are actually making it happen, and the clients who are receiving their service. You realize how important it is not just to help people move their stuff or get rid of their stuff, but actually take a positive step forward. And in your business, I'm sure you guys see this all the time. Many people delay moving into independent living or assisted living or a different way of living longer than they should because they're afraid of it. And when we help them realize there's nothing to be afraid of, and Ray is the guy that is actually making it happen, it just seemed like there was alignment in our mission, in our vision. So that's kind of how we got together.
Powerful. I think Mark, you said it really well. It's we've got to kind of overcome that fear, right? On the other side of fear I believe is incredible joy and opportunity. And I even say that it's fearful of the unknown, but, we have to be willing to take that first step. And I think having someone by your side and helping you navigate that empowers you to be really successful. Going through, challenges alone isn't fun, but going through with a team or a supportive group makes it a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from you, Ray, on how do you address that fear?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really where Caring Transitions comes in. It really is about our name. It's about a caring transition. So part of that means, how do we talk about this? And it can be very interesting with different families and family members who have different thoughts and want to keep different things and throw different things away. So it really is the process of focusing on the senior first in what they want and educating them along the way and not pushing them and taking their time. There's days where if you're working with a senior and if you're busy and you think you're going to declutter a certain room, maybe it's not going to happen that day because they're just not ready, and you create different piles of, all right, let's start with what we're going to throw out and what you're going to keep and what you're going to donate and what we're going to try to sell. And inevitably after the first day, there's nothing in the throwaway pile. And so you've got 40,000 items and you've gone through a whole day's worth of stuff and there's nothing in that pile yet, and I think what our teams do is take their time and have those conversations and let's pick one thing. Let's pick one thing out of these 100 items and let's start there. And of course there's families who have it figured out and they, and the senior has a very good idea of where they want to go, but that's some of the emotion involved in it. And certainly taking the time to listen. A lot of folks will want to tell you the story of every single item, which is a great history lesson, by the way. But, also a great way for them to understand that memory, let that memory go, and then let's move on to something else.
So let me ask a question, because we talked about this on a show maybe a year ago, how families often are, I was in a family role for a good long time, 10, 15 years. And often we have other jobs, we have kids, we have all these other things and maybe don't live real close. So we schedule a day. We all schedule a day to go to dad's or mom's and clean out the house with them. So we give them that much time and that much of our energy. And it creates way more stress than it should. How do you work with families and educate families on that transition?
Yeah, so whenever possible, we try to get everyone together and talk about what each person wants out of the process, what they're most nervous about the move with mom or dad, or the memories, what their worst fears are, what they'd like to see the outcome be. And I think that really alleviates so much stress. The other piece is keep people informed and updated. We found this, we've completed this room. Here's where we are after 2 days. Here's what mom resisted to, especially if the family's in a different state. It really is about the communication. And I think that really sets it up to make sure that the process is smooth. And it's also good sometimes that the family isn't the day-to-day involved. Having a third party that they trust take care of it really sometimes makes everybody else happier, including the senior, that sometimes just wants to, work with our teams, and they'll form a relationship and a bond and start to hear those great stories. And then we'll hear, all the hugs at the end of the process. I wish this wasn't over. And that's where we know we've done a pretty good job, because we formed a relationship, the family's happy, and mom or dad is ready to, start that next chapter.
Absolutely. And Mark, obviously with Growing Boulder being that healthcare company and things like that, how have you worked with Ray to build some of these storylines and some of this education that we all acknowledged before we went on the air here, the importance of it? So how do you take that approach to try to connect with, maybe someone in their 40s or 50s or even, younger that's trying to navigate their next journey or their next transition?
It's a great question, and at the risk of sounding like I'm patting our team on the back, I mean, we're all storytellers, we're all journalists, and I truly believe we're the only media company that has ever existed that tells stories that targets the demographic that we all go after, but we do it in a way that appeals equally to younger adults. And I don't just mean that anecdotally, but all of our research says that. People are curious and they're interested about aging. They want a credible and a believable message. And if you can give that to them with a note of optimism, they are all in. So, what do? We tell stories of ordinary people. We ignore the genetic super freaks. We ignore anybody that's, not kind of just aging with passion and purpose in a real and a realistic way. And I think smart people like Ray understand that when you can tell a story in an editorial fashion that has a desired outcome, i.e., Caring Transitions is the best resource you can have when you need to move or downsize or get rid of stuff. If we can do that in a way that doesn't feel like it's an advertisement, that feels genuine and credible. When we've had an opportunity to talk to his team, I met with an older couple that Caring Transitions moved, and what he said was absolutely true. They had a big move, and who's got the energy to move anymore? My goodness. It takes it out of 30 and 40-year-olds, but when you're 60 or 70 or 80, and I think this gentleman was almost 90, they moved in one day, and they slept in their bed that night, and their clothes were in their dresser and all of that kind of stuff. They were thrilled, but who was really happy was their daughter, who kind of facilitated this whole thing. And, to your guys' point, she realized that, she and her siblings were too busy to get it done, and they were smart enough to reach out to Caring Transitions, and it was done, and everybody was really, really happy. So we just tell stories. That's really what we do. And there's great stories in every one of their interactions. We're the official media partner of the National Senior Games. And I went to the National Senior Games and said, I'll be very honest with you, I have zero interest in who gets first, second, or third. We're not coming to talk about that. I want to tell the stories of the 100,000 men and women who are in your organization that are just coming back from breast cancer. They're losing weight. They had open heart surgery. They lost their spouse. It's a community of support and encouragement. And I think that's what we all learned more than we knew before during the pandemic, the importance of community, the importance of socialization. And this is what Caring Transitions is. It's not, I don't want to say two guys in a truck, because I think that's actually a company. It's not a bunch of guys in a truck that are helping you move. There's relationships that are formed, and it's become a community. So that's what we do. We just try to, with every story that we tell, as diverse as they are, we try to let people know they're part of a community that is empathetic and cares about them.
And Mark, I think you said something that really, I think, is often maybe even overlooked in these processes, is we're in a relationship business. It's not, though, just moving, like, I'm going to move from Seattle to Connecticut, wherever it is. Like, that's one thing. If your wife and kids and all that and driving across country, that's a different thing. But the melding of aging and senior living and communities, it is a multifaceted approach. It's not one area of business. It's not real estate. It's not, maintenance. It's not care. It's relationship. Because at the end of the day, if the person that I'm serving doesn't feel joy and happiness, I don't care. We missed the boat. We might have the best looking building. We might have the best staffing ratio. We might have the lowest turnover. But if I don't connect with that person so they feel ownership and belonging to where they're living,
Amen.
it'll matter. And I think that's often overlooked in this space.
And you know what? Here's the other thing that why I like about what we do, and I love to serve folks like Ray to the extent that we're able to, is that there is a rapidly changing culture of aging, and what whoever is aging into your business, if they're 65 and they're aging into Medicare, if they're 70 and they're aging into assisted, whatever it is. A 70-year-old today is a whole lot different than they were 10 years ago. And a 70-year-old tomorrow is going to be a whole lot different than they are today. And if you don't understand that, if you can't message in a way today that appeals to people that are 10 or 15 years younger, you're not going to do well. And because I spoke with somebody in a meeting today, and she said aging is having a moment. And it really is. Aging is coming of age. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us that are in this space to talk about it in a positive way, and to make people, let's be honest, none of us are getting out of here alive. If we were, it would be a different conversation, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about the challenges in a positive way. Let's figure out how to. Someone from hospice told me one time, there's nothing better than a good death. And I apologize. I'm going off the deep end here. And I said, wait a minute, tell me what a good death is. And they said, a good death is where somebody is where they want to be. They're surrounded by who they want to be with. They have fought the good fight. But at some point, if you're fortunate enough to live long enough, you give in. You say, okay, this is it. And she said, when they do that, well, and you guys are nodding your head, Francis and Catherine, because you know this, you see this, when someone accepts it, there is a transition. And she said, then they get curious, then they get interested, then they're all in. And, I'd love to be fortunate enough to live long enough and not get hit by a truck or be diagnosed with something to have a good death. But I think talking about these kinds of things, aspiring, and if you don't talk about it, if you don't plan for it, if you don't think about these transitions again, your chances of having what you want are not as great as they can be. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity to hang out with you guys and talk about this kind of stuff.
Can I ask obviously Ray and Mark, you guys have seen a lot of senior living communities, and this is kind of something I always tell Catherine. I've been operating for a long time, 13 plus years, started when I was 27. I think, and I firmly believe this, and I will say this to anybody, I think our existing model of senior living, how we built it today, is already outdated, and we just don't know it. We haven't accepted the fact that the models that we think we built in the 2000s or even yesterday is going to be sufficient a year from now, 5 years from now. I think we have to begin to truly understand what you said, Mark, is it's in a moment. And that moment means we have to make a transition itself and not be complacent and say, we'll just make it look prettier. Maybe that's not what we need to do. Maybe we need to have these harder discussions about what do you want on your journey. I'd love your kind of input on how you guys feel we're shifting this industry or where it's heading.
Yeah, we woke up one day, Francis, and looked at our messaging and realized, our image of reaching out to old people. Old people in despair was kind of our mentality as an organization. And we realized, as Mark said, that current version of old has changed. And we want to be the innovators of that. We believe we can change the industry, and joining with people like Mark and yourselves who can look at this a little bit differently and view aging differently. I had a financial planner the other day tell me I was in my fourth quarter, and it was one of those in the fourth quarter of my life. And it was,
Words again.
Yeah.
and he's probably mathematically right, but it was really one of those moments where it was jarring at first, and then it was, you know what, that's okay, this is good, and it's going to be a great fourth quarter, however long it lasts. I think this thought of, that you reach out for different services and support when things are bad. What if you reach out when things are good and move forward? And I think just that different mentality of even businesses to be on the forefront of this versus reactive.
Well,
and I think that's the key.
Let me ask this question. But why do we have to label these quarters? Why does it have to be this part of your life? Why can't it just be your current moment, your current transition? I always say that, we do a lot with dementia care. Dementia isn't the end. It's a change in the ending. And we have to stop these labeling you with, oh, you're in the fourth quarter. Well, maybe you're in your second quarter because you got 3 more quarters. Like, I just get frustrated that we sit here and go, oh, well, we're assuming you're going to be dead in 10 years, so this is your last quarter. Like,
statistically.
Great, but we can plan for that. But let's have some optimism that maybe Ray's got 4 more quarters left. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I think we limit ourselves because that's what we do as a society. I think, Mark, you said it earlier. We have this mentality for aging that needs to be broken. And I think it will be out of sheer necessity, because we're going to have generation and gentlemen like you that say the heck with it. We're not doing it how we always did. We're not keeping our mouth shut.
Well, I love what you said, Francis, and I agree with you. And I think it's bold for somebody in your industry to say that the industry as a whole is not doing it the way that it could be done or should be done. And as there are changing expectations, if you don't get it right, your business isn't going to work. I can go to a dark place really quickly when you look at, the age wave that, the fastest demographic in our country now are people over the age of 85, and the number of nonagenarians is going to grow 6-fold in the next 20 years, and the number of centenarians is going to grow 8-fold. And 37% of them have no savings, and 50% of them have more than 3 chronic illnesses. And, where are they going to end up? And, to me, I think the change has to come from the top down, from people like you that not only care, have the footprint to make a difference, but realize that more is possible. And to me, it comes down to autonomy, and that's the challenge for people in your industry, is to find a way for older adults to feel like they have autonomy when maybe really they don't. We've passed the day of just pinning people to a wheelchair or strapping them into their bed. How can we figure out a way to have quality of life for older adults until the very end? And if you can't make their oldest children realize that you're going to do more than just keep them safe, there is dignity of risk. And what kind of risk am I talking about? Not the kind of risk that's going to, get you seriously injured, but the risk of being embarrassed, the risk of taking chances, the risk of having fun, the risk of leaning into life. And I think people in your industry that feel like they're celebrating life instead of just trying to keep somebody safe until the very end are going to be the ones that are going to really succeed.
I tell kids, we're not here to bubble wrap your mom or dad. We're here to do the best we can. But if dad decides to go out with our dogs, we have a lot of house dogs and animals. If he wants to go for a walk with our caregiver and he wants to take the dog, or he wants to go for a walk by himself because he's able, and he slips and falls, God bless him, because he was doing the thing he wanted to do at that time.
Amen.
So I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I think one word that I'm sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Ray.
One word that jumped to mind as Mark was talking and Francis, as you were, was empowerment.
Oh, yeah.
If the senior feels empowered, and that's part of the process. And Francis, I think you mentioned it earlier when you talked about that it's about the relationship. It's about the connection, and that's empowerment. Even just being informed and understanding the process. And as all of us are out there trying to educate, the more that families, even understand it's okay if mom or dad does this. It's okay if they, what's the worst thing that could happen? Let them, I've got someone in the office who uses the phrase, let them live their life, let
Yeah,
them do their thing. And I just think that that's a key.
well, and if you put yourself into their mindset and their world, they're in a position where they're losing friends, they're losing family members, they're now losing their house, they're now losing maybe the ability to drive, and they feel like things are just being taken away from them and they don't have choice. And that's where I think there's the ability to give them choice, give them empowerment, give them independence, and still provide all of the supports around them and help them make choices so they can thrive, because ultimately it comes down to them. Do they want to thrive? That's a choice. Do you want to live this part of your life, this transition in your life? You want to live it thriving and as happy as you can be? Or do you want to sit in a chair, which I watched my dad do, so this is a real story. Thriving life, amazing life, moved into assisted living and chose to sit in his chair in front of the TV and not interact very well and not get out. And it was heartbreaking. And we watched him die in front of us. It was heartbreaking. So there's choice in there too. And what you're doing at Caring Transitions, what I'm hearing is you're supporting the family and educating them so that we can better support that transition and help them thrive and give them independence and choice along the way, the older adult.
Absolutely. And I think so much of what we try to do is focus on freeing time up to focus on mom or dad. We don't want you unpacking boxes and taking 6 months to clean out a house. Think of all the weekends that a family comes to help mom or dad and they're downsizing the house. What if every one of those weekends was spent just sitting together, going out together, having dinner together, sharing stories together? It's about time at this point too, because there is a limited amount. So if we can give the gift of time to families, I think we're making a change there too as well.
That's impressive.
Because the one thing you can't buy is time, and I love that. I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to jump on. I agree with everything everybody said. But Catherine, you hit on what is one of the most important keys to successful aging. And I had somebody that's in the anti-aging space say that, you can't say successful aging because it makes it a binary. Either it is or it isn't. And I say that's crap. We all get to define what is success to all of us. It might be teaching kindergarten or being a college professor, but Growing Boulder has probably interviewed more active centenarians than any media company in the world. And I mean, actual interviews. And, we just want to find out if there's a common thread. And the one common thread that is shared by all active centenarians, and by the way, it's an incredibly diverse group, which is encouraging to all of us, more women than men, but that's slightly changing. But, urban, rural, rich, poor, black, white. But the one common thread is loss. If you live long enough, you're going to lose your keys. You're going to lose your ability to drive. You're going to lose your hearing. You're going to lose your sight. You're going to lose your spouse. You're going to lose your siblings. You're going to lose some of your friends. Active centenarians have the ability to mourn and move on. They have the ability to adapt and to accommodate. And that's the key to being able to age successfully, is to adapt to whatever loss that is and accommodate to the loss in the extent that you can now continue to find joy that was similar to that. And one of the examples I always give was Grandma Moses, who, loved to embroider. She was a farm woman who had this fine needlework. And when she got older, she had arthritis in her hands so much she could no longer handle a little needle. And, most women in their 80s who couldn't do what they loved to do, that was their lifelong passion, would just give it up and quit. But she figured out she could hold a paintbrush. So she started to paint, and the next thing you know, her paintings are selling for $1 million. So adapting and accommodating, figuring out how to move on in spite of loss is one of the things we all need to figure out how to do.
And that's powerful. I mean, one thing I've really worked on, I kind of try to instill in my kids, and because it's a mentality that I've realized over the years of starting businesses and so forth, comfortable being uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean that you have to always enjoy it, but know there's a sense of peace and comfort when things aren't going as well as you want them to, because the worst thing to do is you curl up in a ball in a corner and you say the heck with it, right? I mean, we need some resiliency throughout life. And I love the Grandma Moses story. That is that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And that is,
she found
another gift.
She didn't even know she had.
Yeah. I mean, that is so cool. So as we kind of wrap up here, I love, Ray, Mark, first off, thank you so much. Like, we could be talking for probably a couple more hours without a doubt, but I'd love you guys to impart some, wisdom or some future hope or things that you'd like to see, as we dive into these discussions for anyone that's listening, families, older adults, maybe even younger people as well too. Love some parting wisdom.
Go ahead, Mark.
You want to take a shot at it, Ray?
Sure, I can do that. I don't know about the wisdom part, Francis, but I will.
Okay.
I will certainly share my thoughts here. I think this was a great example. This conversation is a great example that if we can motivate others to have this kind of conversation, whether it's within friends who are younger to start talking about aging, whether it's families talking about it, I think it really does start with conversations and doing just one thing, just changing your view. Maybe one term you use that is more derogatory towards seniors than it could be. Just one little change, one little, let's try this, one piece. And I do believe conversations like this can make a difference. If there's one person out there who goes, oh, maybe I will talk to mom or dad about this. Maybe I will, see if I just love what Mark said, of course, in his story about, Grandma Moses. And, if we can just get one person to talk, hey, why don't you try this? I think we can really make a difference. So I just appreciate both of you for inviting us on and having conversations like this, because I really do think it matters.
It does.
And I think to wrap it up, we've all read the statistics. I mean, there's been a lot of them, but the most important determinant of how we age is not our genetics, it's our lifestyle. And the most important lifestyle determinant of how we age is not diet or exercise, as important as both of those are. It's our belief system about aging. People who have a positive image of aging live on average 7.5 years longer than those who don't. And it's not just that they live longer, they live better. Because the name of the game is health span, it's not lifespan. Who wants to live to be 100 if it's not good? So I always say that, to me, the key to aging is to learn to focus on what remains and not on what's lost. And time is like every other valuable commodity, in the sense that the less of it there is, the more valuable it should become. But for some reason, our culture wants us to believe just the opposite, that the older we get, the less value our days are. Our culture wants to depreciate us like, a beat up old car in the driveway, when in fact we get more and more valuable as we grow older. And I think we all just have to learn to look at life through that prism, that the older I get, the more valuable I become. And the key is to not mourn what we've lost, but to celebrate what remains.
It's beautiful.
Wow. I don't think we can sum it up any better.
Thank you both for joining the show and sharing these amazing, powerful stories.
And we look forward to, kind of tracking what you all are doing. I'm going to share your websites right here for everyone to take a look at, but please, follow and learn more about, both Growing Boulder as well as Caring Transitions. I think, you hit the nail on the head, and that's the best way I can say it, because both of you were, so well spoken about, what needs to happen, and we truly appreciate that. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, and so let's wrap it up. We are going to wrap it up real quick here with our Unconvention, Collaboration in Aging, happening in Denver, Colorado, September 27 and 28.
This is not your average show. This is not the content you're going to see at every other senior care event that's out there. You are going to learn things that you don't expect to learn, or you don't even know that you need to know about. So make sure that you either come or sponsor and network, and we're diving into the hard stuff. That's the bottom line. We're getting into the hard stuff. I was going to say, if you want to come here and just take notes and feel good about yourself, probably not the right fit for you. It's not worth your money.
What we really are striving for is a level of kind of uncomfortableness where we're growing together, because we think when you're uncomfortable, when you're realizing and feeling that emotional connection, that's where change happens. And that's where we are focusing on, is getting a little kind of nitty gritty, talking about some things that might not always be the easiest to talk about.
Yep.
So if you really want to be a change maker, you want to join us September 27th and 28th in Denver, Colorado. We look forward to seeing everyone there. And until next Friday, we hope you have an amazing